Thanks everyone for coming. AI packs a room. AI packs a whole conference, which is great. My name's Sean. I lead Devon's AI efforts globally from an offering point of view, from developing what it is we're offering to the market. I'm based in the UK, focused on the UK market, but also Netherlands as well. Thank you for having me. My background, 20 years ago, I had jobs where I was basically a glorified data janitor, right? And I got on a very slippery slope, which became more and more profitable over time. And all these different hypes came around. Then big data, and then data science, and then AI. And I was just always in the right place at the right time with the right backing to teach myself something new. And so I went from data janitor to advising companies on AI strategy and joined Devon a couple of months ago to help make Devon an AI company, an AI-ready company, an AI-first company, because I don't think anyone in this room probably believes the way we develop software or run companies will remain unchanged for 5 or 50 years. I don't know when everything will completely change, but somewhere between 5 and 15 years, the way we do everything will be different. What I wanted to talk about today is things that I've seen as come up as themes over my whole career, and they're here again with AI, some myths that we've picked up along the way. I'm not going to point at anyone in this room. I'm going to point at companies I know, and I'm going to point at myself, right? Because every single one of these is something that I have believed at some time and repeated to others and told people they should believe it. So I'm going to destroy my own myths as well in the process of trying to help you maybe get past some of these things if they're holding back you in your AI journey, or if you're hearing these things from stakeholders as reasons to delay your AI journey. So I'll just, massive speed run through my point of view over those 20 years of like how we got to this moment and what it represents. Give you these 3 myths. Some of them might be shocking. A few of them would have got me excommunicated from the data and AI community, but I'm in a safe place here with CXOs and people focused on other things, and offer some tips on how to break free. So in the beginning of computers, right, you needed a whole room to run one computer. They were very expensive, energy inefficient, but they could do pretty amazing things in 1945. And then we found ways to make them smaller and smaller and more homogeneous, right, until sometime in the 80s and 90s. Now, equivalent power, more power was on every single desktop. And we got some useful things from that. We paid some costs as well. And then we went one step further and say, hey, those rooms that were empty, what if we could fill them up again? What if we could squash this down to be even more commoditized and then just stack and rack those? We can go and do amazing things using this kind of technology that was limiting us here, right? And I went through that. I didn't ever use these kinds of computers, but I used things like this, and there were limits to what you could do on a single desktop. And so the value of the cloud is that it unlocks new things that you might want to do with data, but it's not a reason to do anything in itself. Let's switch to data. So when you wanted a computer to work with data in the good old days, and my dad did actually use these, there wasn't really any difference between input, output data. There wasn't analytical data and transactional data. This was it, right? You put this in, some things got punched out and came out, and that's what you had to work with, right? So again, limitations into what we could do. A number of technological barriers were broken. And we started to accumulate a lot more data, and we said, hey, wouldn't it be good if we had these warehouse things and we could take all the data we have and stack it up nice and neatly so that anytime someone needed similar data, they could come in and go to the right shelf on the warehouse and pull it off. That was amazing, right? Because now you could pull together data from different parts of an organization, different parts of the world. But there were still limitations. There were still some things that were a little bit difficult to do. One thing that was difficult to do was to grab the information up front and sort it out later. You had to, a warehouse doesn't work if you dump everything on the floor and then put it on the shelves. You need a process to order those products coming in, same way with information. So the big data revolution has a lot to answer for. We spent lots of money on it for sometimes questionable value, but one useful thing that it did was give us a way to build on this pattern. It did mean taking 3 copies of the data and having data lakes and data swamps and data meshes and data fabrics and stitching things all back together again. But we have all of the patterns, right, and technology that we need to work with any kind of data now on any kind of scale in a way that 10, 20 years ago, some things were genuinely really difficult. This is not 3 pictures about phones, even though every picture is a phone. Something really awesome happened when, some of you are too young to know what this phone is, but some of you had yeah. Which Prime Minister? Okay. So, the phones got more sophisticated over time. Something very interesting was happening inside these phones. So if you remember going from the phones before this to this phone, what was the major innovation? Batteries. Mobility. In terms of communicating with people, you could communicate, with your thumbs. Who needs to talk through a phone if you can use your thumbs to type messages really slowly and then really quickly, right? So what Nokia did was take first the sort of English dictionary and English word frequencies, right? And then other languages, and put it inside this phone with basically no memory. Because it turns out that if the first 6 letters of a word are H-I-S-T-O-R, Y or I are very likely to be the next letters, right? The iPhone, did that really improve the autocorrect? I still send really strange messages, and it's just impossible. But recently, we've got this new interface, right? These LLMs, this chat interface, right? It's important when you're trying to sift through all the hype to understand the link in any fancy new AI back to the fundamentals of what that technique is. And this is a really great example where all an LLM is doing is predicting the next something in something, the next token, which we turn into the next word in a sentence, the next paragraph in a book. But it's actually just the same thing as this, right? But across all the different AI that we want to use, we can go back to a much simpler version of it to understand how we got where we are today. Just the same way with data and going back to that punch card and cloud computing and going back to a big server in a room. The point of telling you all of that is that today, tell me if you're wrong. You can get the compute, you have enough data, and you have good enough AI. Anyone not got enough compute, or they don't know where to get it? Okay, anyone not got enough data? I think everyone's got too much data, more than enough data, right? And the key thing that we all need to get over in this moment is that good enough AI that we have right now is more than good enough to solve certain business challenges which have vexed us in those previous generations of technology that we had. Now, the one exception is if you want to be OpenAI, right? If you want to compete directly with them, maybe it's a really good idea to start that startup right now. Last weekend would have been the optimal time to raise that money, right? But if you put these things together, we're at this kind of boundary of there's actually very few limitations now into what you could apply AI to. That me 2-3 years ago, leading a team building stuff, there were many roads that were just too expensive to go down, and the price of those roads has dropped incredibly since then. But if you look at any Gartner type thing, 65% of CEOs younger than this are more than 20% concerned that blah, 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 risk, reward, the standard. It's almost like there's an LLM called Gartner that just sort of, don't tell them I said this. But this one was really interesting. By 2028, more than half of enterprises that have built their own large language models, anyone building their own large language model from scratch? Good. So the crazy people who are, more than half of them, which is kind of a tricky Gartner stat because it's definitely going to be between 50 and 100, right? Will abandon their efforts due to cost and complexity. So something's still a bit weird, right? If we kind of agree, we've got the compute, we've got the data, we've got the techniques, and we're still generating really weird stats like this. They might be true, but they're still kind of difficult to understand where that comes from. something is holding us back. And when I look back on my career, there are, as I said, a number of myths that I have believed at different points and propagated at different points that are holding us back from making progress with the ingredients that are already right in front of us today. So for each of these myths, I'll drop the bomb, I'll tell you the myth, you can chase me out of here with a pitchfork. I'll tell you where I think it comes from, and that might be me, partly where it comes from. Tell you what the problem is with that, and maybe give you a chance to break free. So, first myth comes from people like me, consultants who want to sell you some kind of advice related to data and AI. Who's ever heard something remotely like that said to them? At least one person put their hand on. Come on. Yeah. If you go to data AI type conferences, it's like every second talk, at least half of the content is just some version of this. And it's not that that's wrong. It's not that data foundations are unimportant. Of course, you should have some kind of data foundations. But should you use it as an excuse not to apply the right kind of AI to the right problems? That's where I start to have a bit of a problem with this. Where does it come from, though? It comes from a long history of people like me saying, first you need to do descriptive, and then you do prescriptive, and then you do diagnostic. We love a maturity model, right? We love a linear maturity model. We think these are great for business cases. Maybe they're not. But like we love to rack it and stack it, and like, oh, if we can just get this right, then we'll be perfectly able to do this thing. And it's a very seductive way, right, to think about how you want to drive value from data. For me, like I love a good standard, right? And if this were like really good and useful, I think there'd be kind of one version of it. But no, everyone puts their own spin on it, including me. This is my version from 10 years ago. All I was trying to capture was that you can think about organizations and how an organization as a whole makes decisions. But the huge, massive hole that you can drive a truck through here is that, think about cash flow forecasting or something, cash flow optimization. Data people, technology people look at that and they go, we need to optimize it, therefore we need to predict it, therefore we need to describe it. Someone in your business is optimizing cash flow today. They may just not be doing it the way that you would like. Maybe you think you could do it better. And so many people like me have used this very linear way of thinking about the world to go back to first principles and build a whole bunch of stuff that when you took it to the business, they didn't use it, right? There has to be a reason this model keeps coming back and we're not making the progress that we wanted. And then that universal excuse of, well, we didn't have all the foundations. That must be the reason. We tried to jump off here, but we didn't have all the setup. So the problem here is this overly linear thinking, right? Trying to change how a whole organization makes decisions is quite difficult, right? And it's not a trap that we want to fall into. In the age of generative AI, this problem is still there. So this is ironic. The biggest challenge here is data quality, but they asked a biggest challenge question and let everyone answer as many times as they wanted. So about half of these respondents who are chief data officers said that data quality and or finding the right use case is a problem. So maybe there's some that have no data quality problems and the only problem they have is use cases and vice versa. But more likely, a bunch of these problems all go together. And for me, it still goes back to they're still thinking about competing with OpenAI, about building AI when you don't actually need to, right? Our job, everyone in this room, is just to apply the AI that people have spent incredible resources building to solve problems. So applying AI, getting value from AI is becoming much more of an engineering challenge than a design and R&D platform, and that's right on time. We couldn't go through another R&D AI phase, another big data, another spend 100 million, whatever, and maybe not know what you got out the other side. And the intellectual challenge here is about what prediction is. When we say prediction, we naturally think of the future and very far off things. All the AI does is it makes predictions cheaper, right? But we need to get over this linear thinking, and we need to be able to imagine that we don't just want to predict the future, we also want to predict things right now And we even want to predict what's the next best word in the sentence. That's all an LLM is doing, is predicting the next best token, the next best word in the sentence. Once we free ourselves from linear maturity models and having to get everything right first, we can do some pretty amazing things with very cheap technology very quickly. My go-to here is like, when people say that, I say, well, let's use AI to improve your data foundations, which kind of blows people's minds. It's a very cheeky kind of way to disprove this point. Look inside any product, right? If these are the components of a digital product, every digital product has some kind of data validation problem that manifests for the people who operate the product or the customers. And there's lots of fantastic techniques from the 1970s onwards that cost you tens of euros to start applying that can help you start improving data quality, improving data foundations in a given product using AI, right? So AI is something more than a thing we tack on the end of BI, right, to do some magical extra thing. It allows us to actually re-engineer things much more fundamentally. Another myth that you might still labor under, even if you get over that one, is, well, it's okay, we've got so much data on so many customers and so many products that actually, we have an enduring business advantage without using AI. This one also comes a little bit from data people and like people like me who are kind of perfectionist procrastinator types. Just one more bit of data, just one more bit of analysis, just that perfect filter on that dashboard will make everyone finally see who our customers are, what they're trying to do, all that. And I've lived through personally when that approach, right, which is kind of a consequence of that linear thinking, frustrates a product team so much that they go, screw you, dear colleague, I'm just going to go and buy inferior data from a third party just because I can just get it at the end of a damn API and not have to deal with you complaining about how we join all this data from all these different places across the business. Because the more you think you have this data advantage, the harder it is to actually stitch it all together, right? And that's a trap that a lot of organizations spend years, decades, repeatedly building their next single source of truth, right? Everyone has more than one single source of truth, and then they think one more time, just get that one more single source of truth. And then they end up with 3, and then they end up with 4. And what product teams get annoyed with is, I can't use any of that. I need to do something for our customers. I need to improve a service somehow. And you're saying you need another 5 years to get the data ready. So AI is how we close that loop, right, from data to action, right? You're not really doing AI unless you're closing that whole loop. And the problem is, while you're messing around with that, everyone else is collecting the same data. So when I moved to the UK 7 years ago, I became a customer of a major bank. The only thing they've ever upsold me was a personal loan at an amazing interest rate right before the market turned. They've never sold me anything else that was in their advantage, despite observing everything I've earned, bought, spent in the UK and abroad in 7 years. You go to their website, they're doing amazing things with data and AI. Inside all of our products are all these opportunities to do something much more narrow that doesn't require boiling the ocean. So if you wanted a way to break yourself out of that, and preempt what happened to me when a product team just went to a third party and said, thanks for that 1.5 years of work, Sean and team, you could do that. You could preempt that and actually help your product teams get ahead of that and be the ones who are pushing you to adopt AI and make the most of your data. Who knows Devon Academy? Lisa does. So we're going to teach this to your product managers if they want this. Myth 3, if we're coming to this late, all we need to do is just copy what other people did who were successful. This happened to me a couple of years ago. A cookie manufacturing company said, we need to predict something, so we're going to build a Google quality AI team. And they make biscuits. This kind of is a bit of a mix of survivorship bias and Bill Gates quotes, right? So if we just look at the lessons we learned from people who went through a massive process to become successful, and we forget all of the data before that, we just go, amazingly, ridiculously successful person, what did you do? And they say, I did X, Y, Z. Well, thousands of other people have done the same things and didn't become Bill Gates. So if we want, or if we accept that one day AI will be endemic. It will be in every process. It will be powering everything. But we would like it to be cheap and safe and easy, not, dangerous killer robot stuff. Until a year ago, we were in the age of good old AI, right? Where a bunch of companies did some really, really hard things that were super easy for us to adopt, right? And simply by adopting good old AI, you can be late on that and it's completely fine. Early adopters of generative AI, so not the OpenAI builders, are going to be able to just apply things to language, right, that 5 years ago were unimaginable. You can run those in cheap ways and expensive ways. We recommend running them the cheap way. Productizing those interfaces, getting them in front of a customer is easier than it's ever been. And your advantage does depend on your data. This is why you need to act on your data advantage. You need to turn it into actions now, because other people are collecting data and they're going to sell you all the things that other people sold me instead of the bank that had perfect data on me. If you're late with generative AI, yeah, you'll still not need to really build everything, but other companies will have eroded your data advantage, right? And everything we know about people will have somehow seeped into all these large language models and you'll be a little bit stuck. So you don't have to be OpenAI, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, anyone. Take their contributions, right, to everyone in this room as a blessing of stuff you don't have to develop anymore. Yes, you need to apply it safely. That takes skills and engineering. But that reduces the cost of your success in a way that we could hardly imagine. So takeaways. Do get your data foundations in order. I'm not saying don't do that. Do rely on your data advantage. Don't forget about that. Do get inspired by what leaders in this space can do, but don't use any of that as an excuse to be late on AI. If you need a book recommendation, this book, highly recommend it. It really helps you take all of the complexity of AI and boil it down to AI makes predictions cheaper. If you can find uncertainty in your business and your products where resolving that uncertainty creates value, then you're onto a winner. That's how you find use cases. Simple as that. If you need help, Devon is here to help. If you need to know how to get started, how to go faster, any of that we can help as well. We'll probably send that out afterwards.